Hello, and welcome to Follow the Woo podcast, where each week I, Fenelon Kush, will guide you on a journey into the land of the woo. We're going to investigate witchcraft, meditations, the paranormal and supernatural, alien and fae encounters, gurus, shamanism, and all the woo. So hold on to your butt. This just might be the weirdest part of your day. Hello, how are you? Fen here. In this episode, I'll be chatting with Tara Vega. She is one of those people that immediately felt like a kindred spirit to me. In many ways, it seems like we're on similar paths. She's an empath, a storyteller. She's currently in the renowned Stark Film Production MFA program at USC, and she's a hardcore woo seeker. The first time we spoke, which was not that long ago, she mentioned she has seen about 15 psychics. And I was like, oh shit, this is my kind of human. I would love to tackle multiple episodes with her, but today we have the awesome opportunity to dive into her most powerful past life regression experience. We're also going to compare her past life regression experience with mine, see where there may be some overlaps, and just discuss some of the lessons that we learned from these experiences. If you've had a past life regression, then you know this shit is weird. And if you haven't, then maybe after this episode, you'll want to have one done. I certainly would like to participate in another one, preferably with the woman that Tara went to, because wow, her experience was incredible. So here we go. Hi, Tara.
Hi.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Of course. I'm super excited. So I usually like to start with your interest level in the woo and your general background. Like, what kind of woo things have you gotten yourself into?
I would say I have a pretty high interest in the woo. I'll pretty much explore anything. Like, started out with tarot and astrology, then kind of branched into psychics. I've seen like a ton of psychics and gotten a lot of tarot readings. I did tea leaves one time, like tea leaf reading. I've done palm readings. I would say like pretty much the only thing that I haven't done is like any kind of medium. Like I've never spoken to anyone dead. Like that's been something I haven't, but really anything else, reincarnation, past life regression, which we're going to talk about today. But yeah, all of it. I'm always down to to try a new thing.
You have been interested in this stuff since how far back?
I was probably like 6 or 7 years old. And I had this dream. And in the dream, I was watching somebody else's life play out. And I knew the person was me. And like, I'm Black, but the person that I was dreaming about was like Russian for some reason and was running away from this woman. She was like a ballerina and running away from this like headmistress type person. And I was like, oh my God, that's me. That's definitely me. It was just this weird knowing. And I asked my parents about it and they were like, oh yeah, reincarnation, past lives. And they're not really into that, but they kind of, at least gave me the language for what it was. And that kind of kicked everything off.
And that's when you said you were 6 or 7 years old?
Yeah.
I had a similar experience when I was maybe around that age, maybe a little bit younger. I had this the same kind of thing where I brought it up to my mom, like, hey, Mom, remember when I had this really big toy box with moons and suns on it? And I had these old people that were my parents. And she was like, no. It was just like a hard no. And then, my mom was super woo woo. And so I was lucky. I also got the language to deal with that. But it was like from that moment, very early on, I knew, okay, I'm going to be a weirdo. I'm going to be one of those people who's like always dabbling in this stuff. And I remember her asking my grandma and like multiple people in my family, and they didn't know. Did that happen to you where like or did your parents just say, nope, that was a past life, and they really validated that for you?
I mean, my mom was a little bit more validating than my father. Like, I think my father just finds all of this to be quite ridiculous, to be honest with you. Like, he'll play along, but it's definitely not his thing. But with my mom, she was just like, yeah, this is what it is. You can believe in that. That's cool. Like, I don't believe in it, but you can go ahead and do your thing. So I felt like they validated me and they didn't really make me feel weird about it. It was just kind of like, oh, that's Tara's thing. I knew it
Yeah.
wasn't going to be shared amongst the family, but it was like, oh, this is the thing you like and that you're into.
Not our thing. This is Tara's thing. You have siblings.
Yeah.
I forget. Is it two brothers?
Three brothers.
Three brothers. And did they have any memories of it, or did they make fun of you for this, or do they even remember it?
So I'm considerably older than my siblings. So actually, two of them probably weren't born. And then one would have been like one or two. At the time, he definitely was not in any place to like remember or have any opinion on it. But as I got older, it still was just kind of like, oh, Tara's into this stuff. She reads tarot, she's doing astrology. But none of them, I don't think any of them were ever super into it. But they never made fun of me. I mean, I was also so much older than like they weren't going to make fun of me. They're probably a little scared of me, but they never did anything, never said anything mean about it.
That's really nice, because a lot of times when I talk to people about the woo, they tell me that their experience with their parents is judgmental.
And they've always just kind of been like that. Like, actually, every year for Christmas, my mom buys me this astrology calendar. This year, she also bought me a tarot calendar as well. And so, like, they'll encourage it. But I think my mother's a little scared of it. Like, I think she believes, but I think it's just like, oh, this is too much for me. So I'm just going to like put it over here in like a little box. But she's definitely been encouraging.
I think a lot of the people that I talk to are kind of like, oh, I want to dip my toes in, but I'm also really scared of what I might find, what I might discover in a past life regression or a meditation or whatever it may be. It's so outside of the ordinary everyday reality that it can be frightening. So I totally understand that, especially when it comes to paranormal shit.
Yeah, ghosts and stuff. So that's the thing. My parents actually were believers in ghosts. Before they had us, they said that there was a baby that would always cry in their house. And they were like, no one in the entire street had a child. It's this phantom ghost baby.
That is weird.
I think they're believers, but I think it's more like a little bit of that fear element that kind of keeps them out of certain aspects of it.
Yeah. I think that's pretty common. Are you an X-Files fan?
I've actually never seen X-Files. That is like
you have not.
I know.
What is wrong with you? I'm just kidding. Well, you know the two, Scully and Mulder.
Scully and Mulder. Yeah.
Mulder is generally the one who's obsessed with the woo, and he believes everything. He doesn't have a problem believing anything. And Scully is the voice of reason and rationale. I identify as a Mulder, although I like Scully better, for the record, listeners. But I definitely identify with the archetype of Mulder. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would 100% agree. I'm like willing to believe in like almost anything. Like, I feel like I might need a little bit more of that Scully factor so I don't get like hoodwinked, but I am a believer.
We did briefly talk about doing like an on-site episode someday, which would be so cool. If we did, we'd have to bring a Scully with us.
Yes. Yeah.
Just
I know quite a few of them.
Okay, good. Me too. We'll be all right. Yeah, we'll be all right. Besides past life regressions, what other like woo-woo activities have you been getting into lately? Or you mentioned tarot, you mentioned psychics. What other things have you dabbled in?
Yeah, so I've gotten super into human design lately, which I feel like is a new thing that is hitting people's radar. Actually, the friend of mine who introduced me to the person who did my regression was the one who taught me about human design. So I've really been digging into that. I've been trying to start doing my own tarot readings. Like in the past, I was just got readings, but now I feel like I have been getting read long enough that I should be able to start reading other people. So kind of diving into some classes on that. It's kind of been like the main two things that I guess I've been focusing on, and a little bit of astrology. I feel like astrology is always in the background for me, and I like dip in and out of it. I'm always like comparing charts with friends on CoStar and all those other astro apps that are out there.
The Pattern, have you heard of that one?
Yes, I have the Pattern.
Oh my God, the Pattern is like wizardry.
The pattern is kind of creepy. Like it
Yeah.
feels like it knows too much.
Oh yeah, human design. I'm a generator? Is
Okay,
that?
yeah, I'm a generator as
Are you
well.
a generator? I don't know what that fucking means. But we'll have to I really want to do an episode on human design.
No, it's great. It's hard, I feel like, to find a lot of information. Like most of the stuff I've been finding has been like some Instagram influencers that have kind of popped up around it, but it is definitely, it feels like it's new, or it feels like it's starting to get hot.
I would love, if you're open to it, to do other episodes, maybe about tarot or human design or did you say you identify as an empath? An empath?
Yes, yeah, definitely. No, I'd love to come on for future episodes. And not like very few of my friends are into this kind of stuff. So I don't really get a chance to talk about it too much.
Same. I mean, in LA, there are a lot of woo-woo people, but sometimes they're hard to reach, if you know what I mean. Like sometimes they can be a little too ungrounded for me to have a consistent conversation with them.
No, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. Sometimes you're like, what are we talking about now? I don't know. I don't know what you're saying. So, reincarnation. I've had two much shorter past life regressions. I want to share our experiences, but I want to focus on yours first.
Mhm.
Your earliest reincarnation memory was when you were like 6 or 7 years old.
Right.
And have you had any others besides that one?
Nothing that really stands out to me up until the regression. Like I feel like that was just kind of the one anchor memory. And there'd be like weird deja vu moments and stuff like that, but like nothing that like came through as like clearly as that.
I don't know if you've seen this or not, but there were a bunch of news segments over the past, like, I don't know, I want to say 15 years. I'm just pulling that out of my ass, but about like kids who remember something and then they actually got to go back and find what they were saying and it was historically accurate.
Oh wow.
And
That's crazy.
it's really, there's so much anecdotal evidence for past lives. It's unbelievable. It's like aliens, There's so many people that have said they have seen aliens. We're talking like it's gotten to the millions.
Yeah.
And it's so weird, right? Because we so much devalue anecdotal evidence. But hello, I mean, it can't be
Yeah.
nothing, right?
No, I feel it especially with kids. Like I have friends who have young children, and the kids will sometimes just say these things and you're like, this they didn't hear that anywhere. Like that's not something that they would have heard about in school or seen anywhere. Like it has to come from somewhere. So it just feels very, very real to me.
Kids can say the creepiest things. Like all of a sudden, and you're just like, am I alone here with you? Like, this is like the day of my death. I don't know. It can be very unsettling. I think they are I always say, I think they're a little closer to what is
Yeah.
beyond being human. I think they're closer to it.
I 100% agree with that. And I think they're also probably way more receptive to it than we
Yes.
are.
Yeah, they haven't been numbed by like the monotony of capitalism
Right.
and. Okay, we should probably, for the listeners that don't know, talk about what past life regressions are and what reincarnation is, just in case. I feel like most people who are going to listen to this podcast will already know what this is, but just in case, how would you define reincarnation?
I guess I would say it's, souls being rebirthed in different bodies and circumstances over like eons, I guess.
That's pretty basic and very simple to understand. The official definition is reincarnation is the philosophical or religious belief that the non-physical essence of a living being starts a new life in a different physical form or body after biological death. It's also called rebirth or transmigration. Then past life regression, how would you define that based off of your experience?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of like living, or at least going back into past experiences that you've been through, like unearthing them, I guess. Probably
Okay.
maybe a better way of saying that. Kind of bringing them into your consciousness.
The official definition of past life regression It is a method that uses hypnosis to recover what practitioners believe are memories of past lives or incarnations. And I just will add it here for the Scullies out there. The practice is widely considered discredited and unscientific by medical practitioners and experts. I mean, when you look it up, that is like right there. They want to get that right out of the way.
I'm not surprised.
There are two camps of past life regressionists. The first are those who feel that it should be a firsthand remembering through hypnosis or hypnotherapy. And then the second camp are those who think it should be done through a medium. For the listeners, that'd be like you go to somebody, you pay them some dollars, probably, most likely, and they go into their medium state and they pick that up for you and they give it back to you. Almost like a shamanic journey a little bit. The other way, which is the hypnosis way, is that you're put in a state and you're remembering yourself through hypnosis. Which was your experience?
So mine was me reliving it through my hypnosis. But oddly enough, I thought that everybody did it the second way, where like a medium just tells you things.
You did.
Yeah.
I also thought that as well. And I didn't even understand that there was a hypnosis element.
Yeah, me neither. I had no idea. Like when I went, I really did not do any research. I just went. So.
Actually, my first one, which I'll share later, was the second way, which was basically her just telling me. And then the second way, which I found was much more powerful and much more emotional, was when I remembered myself. Let's start with like setting the scene. You went to India. How did you get there? Why did you go? Who got you there?
Yeah, so actually I was in India for work. It had nothing to do with anything woo. It was nothing spiritual. I was doing an event with Manchester United Soccer Club. I used to be an event producer before I moved into film. And they were doing this big activation in Bangalore. And it was just going to be an event, a huge event outside at this mall. And was not thinking about regression, anything spiritual there. I was like, okay, I have to take this 20-hour flight, have to do this event, and then I have to go home. But I had been in Scotland, I think it was, with a friend. And she was like, oh, you're going to Bangalore? She's like, I know someone in Bangalore. She does past life regressions. You should look her up. Like, I'll connect you to on Facebook. And I was like, okay, I think I have a free day. So why don't I message her and see if I can meet up with her? I really had no idea what to expect. I had always wanted to get a past life regression done, but I didn't know anyone in the States. It just was something I never explored. So when she said she had a friend and I'd known her, like she and I are very close. So I was like, okay, I trust that this person you're going to send me to is legitimate. Let's like go ahead and do it. So we talked on Facebook, and she normally didn't take appointments on my free day, but she agreed since I was friends with Kim, our mutual friend. She was like, yeah, like I'll take you on Monday. Let's meet in the morning.
It feels like to me as a molder, you were meant to be there.
No, I 100% agree. It was very serendipitous, all of it that happened, because I actually almost missed the appointment and she still saw me. So that was also great. But yeah, I hadn't researched anything, nothing. It was very much like spur of the moment whim, things just fell into place.
You said you almost missed the appointment. What happened?
So the previous day was the close of our event, which had been like a really hard, rough event. And we were just all drinking. I think I was out, like, I was so wasted. Like I got drunk. It's like 3:00 in the morning. And then I was like, oh, I have to go for this thing. And I had arranged a car to come and pick me up, I think at like 7, because it was going to be a 2-hour ride from where I was to get to where she lived, because it was at her house. And I woke up and it was 8:30. And I was like,
Oh, no.
okay, this is not going to happen. Oh my God, how could you have like gotten so drunk that you missed this thing? I was so upset with myself, but I messaged her because I think our appointment was at 9. And I was like, there's no way I'm getting there by 9 because it's a 2-hour ride. Is there any way that I can come later? Or actually, I don't even think I asked that. I think I just assumed she wasn't going to see me. And I was like, so sorry that I missed this. But she's like, well, actually, because it's my free day and I don't see anyone, I don't have any appointments. So just get ready, get yourself situated, and take the drive over here, and I'll see you when you get here.
Wow. And so you almost missed it, but she still was like, nah, you can come whenever you want.
Exactly. I was so grateful to her for that. I told her that afterwards. Yeah, she did not have to see me, but she did.
What compelled you to go? You have a genuine interest in the woo. Was it just that? Or what was it that was like, oh, I really got to do this?
A lot of it was the interest. It also was like, oh my God, I'm going to do this in India. Like that felt very exciting to me instead of at the time I lived in the Bay Area, like, oh, I'm just going to go down to San Francisco or go over to Oakland and get one of these. It was like, oh, I'll be in this different place, this different space. And also was my friend. I really do trust her. And I mean, we could have a whole podcast on my experiences with her as well. But she's very much into the woo stuff, very witchy. And I figured anyone that she was recommending highly as someone that she saw herself was probably going to be really good. And I know she had said she had had a couple of sessions with her, and it just seemed like to line up quite nicely that it was like I was in Bangalore and she was also in Bangalore. Like she could have been in another city in India, but we were both going to be in the same space. So it felt like something I had to do.
I'm going to this lady. How old is she? Is she still alive?
So she's super young.
Is
Like
she?
yeah, I was very surprised. Again, I also knew nothing about her. And I think until I saw her Facebook profile, I assumed that she was going to be like 65. I thought that this was going to be like someone my mother's age or even like a grandmother. But I think she and I were only a few years apart. So like I'm in my mid 30s. So she's either in her mid to late 30s or like just 40. So yeah, she's not an old woman at all. She's definitely still around. It almost felt like I was just talking to a friend. Like there wasn't that, I think it's really easy sometimes to put up walls with people, especially for me, like with someone older than me, I might feel, oh, like maybe I shouldn't talk about sex, or maybe I shouldn't talk about drugs, or maybe I shouldn't talk, like you kind of start to police your language and your thoughts and what you want to tell them. And with her, I felt like there wasn't that barrier at all. And I think the age definitely helped clear that for me. And also when we were speaking, like before things started, she told me that her mother also does these regressions. And so it's sort of something that's been passed down her line. And so I felt like I understood that, like that, mothers giving gifts to their daughters. So I didn't doubt her at all.
What did you imagine it would be like before you got there? Did you have something in your mind?
Honestly, I felt so caught off guard by everything that happened because when I say like I did no research, I didn't look at anything, which is really weird. I'm very like Virgo analytical, love looking stuff up. None of that. I just was literally like, oh, I'm going to this woman's house. I also don't know this woman from anyone. I'm going to her home in a city that I've never been in, and a city where like our company kind of they were very into making sure we were secure there, even though I always felt safe. But, I had to have a driver to take me there. It was all very like regimented. And it's wild to me that I didn't think to do any kind of research. So I thought it was going to be like what you had mentioned before, where a medium just tells you something. And I think that was also why I didn't really prepare myself, because it was just like, well, there's nothing to prepare. I'm just going to go there. She's going to sit down and like light some candles and tell me a thing. And then we're going to call it a day. Like I honestly thought that was what it was going to be.
I think that's what most people think past life regressions are.
Yeah.
How much did this cost and how long did it take?
So I believe it was a 3-hour experience. And it was 45 US dollars, which gave me a tremendous amount of guilt. Like I was like this, I mean, I felt like I was stealing something from her because in America, I feel like you can't even see a psychic for $45. I mean, maybe for like 15 minutes or 20 minutes, but I just feel like all of these experiences in the States are like $500, $750. Psychics are out here and mediums and people are charging lots and lots of money. So it felt very weird to pay such a small amount for it. Like I think I actually ended up giving her 2 or 3 times whatever the rate was because I felt so bad. And even that was nowhere near what I would have paid for it in the US. And I know in India, the monetary exchange is like different, and their relationship to money is different maybe than that we have in America. But I felt very like 3 hours is a long time. for $45. Like it felt not enough to me, and especially given the experience that I had. Maybe I would have felt differently had it not been so powerful, but I definitely felt like she should be charging more.
Have you gone to a past life regression since this one?
I haven't. It's almost like, you know, that thing where you have this really transformative experience and then you like want to go back and repeat it and you're like, it's probably not going to be as good. That was sort of how I felt about it. And I was living
Mhm.
in Singapore at the beginning of this year, at the end of last, and I thought about seeing her again in India since it's not that far to get from Singapore to India. But with everything that happened with COVID, it just like never ended up happening. But I don't know if I would go and see somebody else. Like it just feels like, would it be as good as it was that time?
What were you feeling when you got there? Were you scared? Were you nervous?
I was definitely thrown off. One, I'm a person who does not like to be late, who does not like, I felt like already like, oh my God, this woman is going to think that I'm just the biggest asshole because like I'm this dumb American who, you know, is taking time on her like day off. I can't even show up on time. So I think I had so much of that energy that I was bringing in as well, just really feeling like, oh God, like I already fucked this up. And now,
Yeah.
like, here I am. It was almost like I couldn't be nervous about what was going to happen because I was so disappointed in myself for kind of doing things this way. And also, like, traffic the whole time I'm sitting in the car, like, oh my God, are we going to get there? Are we going to get there? And it was her personal home. So we had to go through all these gates to get in. So that was really the energy I came in with. There was no nerves. It was just more me like beating myself up for not being responsible.
Well, how would you describe this woman? What does she look like? What does she feel like? Does she have a calm demeanor or?
It was just like hanging out with a girlfriend. Like she was very warm and welcoming, but like in a friend way, not in like a motherly kind of way, but just sort of like, oh, we're going to spend time together. Like, hey, you're here. I didn't feel uncomfortable with her at all. I felt like she was able to really draw me in a way. And I mean, I am a person that is generally very open to other people's energy, but she was just very fun and she had some humor to her. Like it really did feel like I was hanging out with a friend. And being in her house, I think also added that element as well. Like it wasn't like we were in a studio or at a shop. Like this was the place where she sleeps and eats. And like, so it felt very much like, you know, you're just going to somebody's house, like kick it for the afternoon.
It didn't feel like so ethereal or otherworldly. It was just kind of like, hey, here we are. We're going to do this thing.
Yeah, it felt like I think sometimes with some of the psychic experiences, and I think this is also why other people are put off by them, there's this like pageantry where
Mhm.
it's like, oh, I have to have like a crystal ball, or oh, there has to be like dark sheets everywhere. Like there was none of that. Like it was very, very real. And so I felt like, of course, like we're just gonna sit here and we're gonna do this thing. And I didn't feel like she was putting on a show for me because I think when I see things like that, I automatically doubt the authenticity of it. In my opinion, like if your power is real and you can really do this thing, you don't have to dress it up in any kind of way.
Yeah,
So I
well
felt like
said.
she was just her. It was just very authentic.
So then what happened?
And we sat down and she was just like, okay, so I want you to tell me your life story. And I was like, what? Like, what the fuck does that even mean? Like when if somebody were to sit down and ask you, what is your life story? What would you say?
I would be overwhelmed by that question because I'd be like, how do I even begin? What do you want? All the
Right.
details? What do we even focus on?
So it was very much like she just kind of laid that out. And I mean, I'm a talker, obviously. We've been talking and you've spoken to me before. So I knew I could fill time, but I just started from the beginning. I literally started from birth. I talked a little bit about my family. I talked about high school. I talked about college. I went through all of it, like leading up until the time that we were in. And I tried to, I don't know, add details. Like I talked about certain people who were important in my life, certain themes that have kind of come up in my life. But I really just tried to, I don't know, maybe it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes of this is me. I can't remember how old I was. I was maybe like 32. So I think I talked from like 0 to 32 and then just ended it. And then she asked me this question and it totally threw me off guard. She was like, what are you here to heal? And I was like, heal? I think I actually said this. I was like, I didn't know we were healing. I didn't walk in being like, I need to get through this trauma. I literally just came there with a very open mind and no expectations of anything. So when she asked me that, I was thrown and I had to like think. I was like, oh shit. I mean, clearly there's a lot of stuff wrong with me. Like there's definitely things I need to heal, but I wasn't sure like where to go. So I told her that I've had intimacy issues. Like I find it hard to connect with partners. I've never been in love. I've had friendship love, but like not romance love. And I think that like the intimacy block is like a real thing for me. And I had no idea how she was going to use that or how it was going to come up. She really just kind of like, she received it, but she didn't delve any further.
What's the next question? Did she ask you anything else?
So she didn't ask anything, but then she explained what was going to happen, which I was like, great. Like, clearly I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I feel like she probably was sitting there like, you didn't even ask your friend. And I didn't. I never asked my friend at all what her experience was about it. So it was like I went in completely blind. She was like, okay, so I'm going to hypnotize you. And she kind of talked a little bit about hypnosis and what it was. And she also said that a lot of times, like the people who are the most resistant or who think like they can't be hypnotized are the easiest people to hypnotize. She was telling me not to worry about it, that we were going to go to another room, that I was going to lay down, and she does Reiki. And so I think it was the room where she does Reiki, and that she was going to lead me through this thing that was going to be like hypnosis. And she checked in, does that sound good with you? Are you cool with that? Any questions? And I was like, yeah, sounds great. Again, very open, very like, I was like, yeah, sure. Sounds excellent. And then she was like, okay, like, do you want to use the bathroom before we start? Because it's going to be another 2 hours. So I lay down and she, has me close my eyes. She might have like lit some incense or something. And she just sort of starts like telling me things like, you're walking through a field, like stuff like that. I can't remember the specifics of that part of it, but then I remember she was like, okay, now you're walking downstairs. And that feeling you have when you like walk down steps? I felt that. Like I was like, oh, I'm like going down a staircase. Okay, cool. And then she was like, you're going to reach the bottom of the stairs. And then sure enough, I felt that feeling of reaching the bottom. And she said, there's a hallway and I want you to walk up and down it. And there's going to be doors on every side of the hallway, and start like taking a look around at the doors. And so I was walking and there were doors of all different types. And she was like, I want you to pick a door and stand in front of it. I remember this clearly. There was a huge black door, like it looked like the door of a dungeon.
That's the one you picked?
No, I remember looking at that and I was like, no, I'm not ready for that. That is not the door that I'm trying to go down here. I am in a foreign country by myself. Like I'm not going down that door. So I kept on walking, and then I found this door, and it was like a hobbit door. Like it was like rounded and red and shorter than most of the other doors. And I'm like 5'9", so it was like a little bit shorter than me. But I was like, okay, this door like looks a little strange. It doesn't look like I'm going to be walking into some like horrible death like the other one did. So she was like, do you have the door? And I'm like, yep, I have the door. I'm at it. And she's like, I want you to open the door. And I open it, and all of a sudden sunlight is like blazing out of the other side of this door. And she's like, yeah, walk through it. And I probably should have told this a little bit better, but she had told me basically that when we were doing this and we got to this experience, that I was going to be relaying everything back to her. She's like, you're just going to be telling me what you see, and I'll stop and ask you questions, and then I'll tell you when it's time to jump to another part of the experience. So she's just like, yeah, just talk to me, like talk me through everything that you're seeing and doing.
Is she holding your hand, or where are you sitting in relation to her in this room?
Honestly, she wasn't touching me. She may have been like at my head. I was lying on like a table, and maybe she was standing where my head was, or maybe like off to the side of me, but no touch, like nothing. I don't recall her touching me the entire, like maybe she did a little bit of Reiki stuff before we like really got into it. But once I was talking, it was almost like she wasn't even really in the room. Like she was just kind of like a disembodied voice in the room in a sense.
Wow. And had you been hypnotized before?
Not that I can think of. Like I've gone to some psychics and done some stuff, but it was never anything like this. I've done visualizations for meditations and things like that, but usually those were like, recorded things, not with a person physically in the space. So I had never been hypnotized, but I also didn't think that I couldn't be. Like, I didn't walk in there be like, she's not going to hypnotize me. That was not, that's not the vibe of it at all. I'm just not that person. I'm like, oh yeah, sure. Like, I always used to joke that I'd be very easily abducted because I just
Same.
wouldn't even see it. I would be like, I'd walk right into the trap and
Yep.
they would get me and I would be gone.
The cult leader would just scoop me up and I'd be like, sure.
Exactly. I would not see the danger until I was literally in the alligator's mouth. Like, that's that.
Oh God. Okay. Well, noted again that if we do any more adventures, we have to bring rational people.
Yeah.
So now, were you seeing this crisply and clearly? You could
It was
feel
clear
it.
as day. It was like the clearest thing. It was like watching a movie, but like you're kind of in the movie. It was very immersive. And like, so obviously I couldn't see myself, but when I stepped across the threshold and the sunlight was blazing, I saw I had this like long braid, like this braid on the side of my head. And that was really all I could see of myself. I never got a mirror. Like, I never saw my face. I just kind of saw, you can see your arm, you can see your leg, but I didn't see my face at all. And I was definitely, for some reason, I think I was in Bangladesh. Obviously, like, I don't know if that's where I was, but I was like somewhere in like India, South Asia. Like, that was where I knew myself to be in that vision.
How many doors do you think there were? Or was it hard to say?
Maybe like 20, like 10 on each side. I didn't walk very long. I think after I saw that scary door, I was like, okay, let me just find something that feels good. And some of them just looked very normal, like the door to your bedroom. And then there was that scary one. I think like the fact that this door was red kind of stuck out to me because I was like, I want to do something that feels a little different, but I didn't want it to be too crazy. And this seemed like, okay, it's like a little red door. It's a hobbit door. It's different, but it feels not terrifying.
So you go through this door, you're really in it now. You're in a hypnotized state and you see a braid and sunlight shines through this hobbit door. And then what?
So then I can tell that I'm with a group of children. So I know I'm a child. And I see someone who's my brother. And I'm like, okay, this is my brother. And we're like, we got to get home. We got to get home. And we are, racing home. We get home. We're clearly poor. Like, we don't have any money. We live in like a hut. And we go in, but our mom is there and she's just like so warm and loving. And there's just this like, we're like, oh, this is so exciting. We feel really good. She's cooking dinner. Everything feels great. And then it was like, oh, your father's coming home. And all of a sudden it was like someone had like poured cold water over me. And I was like, okay, my father is clearly a bad person. Like, he is not good. This is not going to be great. And sure enough, like, he comes to the door and my mother and I are standing there and he looks at us and he's like, where's your brother? And like, I don't know, I think my brother, we've been playing, and he comes out from the room and all of a sudden my father just backhands him and he like crumbles to the floor. We're all scared. It's just like a terrifying sort of scene. We eat dinner and I'm relaying this to her as this is happening. And after dinner, he calls me to him and I'm like terrified. I couldn't tell. I don't know if there was some kind of sexual abuse or if there was definitely physical abuse, but like it just felt like this person is unsafe and I do not like them. And he rules this house with fear and an iron fist. And I remember he said to me, like, oh, you're old now. He's like, you're like 13 or whatever. And he's like, it's time for you to be somebody else's problem. You need to be married. And I just remember being terrified. And then I ran back into the room that I shared with my brother and just like, crying. And like basically we're both crying because he got smacked and I'm like been told that I'm going to be marrying someone. So I relayed that to her. And then she said what she was like, okay, great. Well, she didn't say great. She was like, okay, now take me to the next significant moment. And that was sort of her cue for me to like move into another vision of that life.
You didn't go to another door. That was just the first opening. And then you went on a little bit of a ride, like a hypnosis ride.
Yeah, it was basically like I was just telling this story and like flash forwarding through to like what I thought was the next major moment that meant something to me.
And were you emotional about experiencing this young girl?
Yeah, I wasn't crying at that point. I definitely cried for the rest of it. But at that point, it was just like more fear. I was like, oh my God, fear and this just not feeling entirely safe, but then also having this relationship with my mother that was clearly wonderful. And then having this brother, where we would commiserate about, being smacked around by our father. I felt like there was love there, but then there was also this like fear underlying all of it. After that, it was the wedding. So I saw myself and I was getting married. And, my mother was excited, but she was preparing me. But basically, I was marrying this widower and he had like 3 kids. And he came to me and was like, look, I won't hit you. I won't mistreat you. I'm not a bad man, but like, I will never love you. I already loved this woman, the mother of my children. She died. This is just like what this is. And, he was like, I honestly don't even really want to touch you, but we have to have a child or else people are going to think things are weird. You give me a child and then I'll leave you alone forever. I'll make sure you're taken care of, but you need to raise my children and be in my house. Like, that's going to be what it is. And so feeling a tremendous sense of sadness at that, and also sadness about leaving my mother's home. As much as I want to get away from my father, it was like, oh, but my mom is going to be alone with my father and my brother, and really feeling sad about that.
Do you stay in this narrative the entire regression?
Yeah, it was all this life, which is also something I did not expect. I thought I was going to be going like for 3 hours. I thought we were going to do like 40 lives. I really thought it was going to be a lot, but it was really intense in this one experience.
That's fascinating because both of my experiences, we did multiple lifetimes. Not tons, but more than one. So it sounds like it's a quality over quantity thing almost with this woman. Do you know if she always does just one?
I don't actually know. Because again, like I said, I never asked my friend what her experience was. I do think, though, that she does do these with multiple people. And if I recall correctly, at the end of our experience, she was like, the first one is always the longest. Like, if you were to come back, it would be a little bit easier and it wouldn't be as detailed. But this first one is going to really take you some time. Maybe I also just saw a lot of things because I had like 5 or 6 significant moments. It wasn't like I just saw a couple of scenes. It was very much like I saw a whole life.
Now you're about to marry this guy. Have you married him yet? Or you're at the wedding, you said?
Yeah, at the wedding. We get married and then I jump to the next significant part of that. Because like really what it was more me having that conversation with him about him not being capable of loving me, but like we're going to have this marriage, knowing that he's not going to be the man my father was, but he'll be unloving in a different way. But, I'll be taken care of and I'll have what I need. And the whole thing about having a child, like that was something we had to do. It seemed like for the community, for us not to be like shut. It was like, okay, you have to have a kid. I don't really want to have a kid with you, but like this is the duty that we all have to provide. And then she was like, okay, what's the next significant moment? And for me, that was, I saw myself giving birth, which is like fucking crazy. I've never had a baby before, but that experience, like that, I think was when the tears like really started coming.
Where were you? Were you just could you see your knees? Could you see your feet? Like where were we looking?
I was standing and my mother was there and like a midwife, I guess. And they were holding my hands and I was giving birth. A baby was like coming out of me. I didn't really feel pain, but I was crying. So maybe I did feel pain. I just was repressing it, but it was just like, I was in it. It was that moment of me having this child in this, in the house. I don't know if it was my house, but, it was definitely it was not a hospital in this. I don't think the lives that we were living, like there was any kind of hospital happening then. And I also couldn't tell, this was interesting to me. I had no idea what time it was. Was it the 1800s? Was it the 19? Like, not a clue.
I was just going to ask you that. Like, what time period? Could you tell by clothing or anything? Or
it could have been like in the early 1900s. It was also hard because you could tell that we were poor. Everyone was like some degree of poor. Like even the person that I married, maybe he was a little bit well off than where I came from, but like there wasn't wealth. And so I think that also kind of shifted things with the timing. Like I do remember a stove. We weren't cooking over like a fire pit or anything like that. So there was like some sort of like modernity, but it was all like everything felt really old. And like I felt all of her emotions and all of the things she was feeling. And, even with the pregnancy part of it, or the birth, like I felt overjoyed at that. And I think that was part of why I was crying. It was like I had a daughter, and it was this moment of like, oh my God, no one has loved me. And now I have this daughter that I can pour my love into, who will pour her love back to me. Like it felt like almost like it was saving my life. Like it was exactly what I had needed, was like having this child. And so I was just crying the whole time, but it wasn't sadness really. It was like, oh my God, finally something to like really live for, something that I think is going to make my life better. It was basically, I saw her being born and like holding her. And then that's kind of where we stop. So then we're kind of taken a little bit out of that narrative, and I see my mother's death. And so I'm at her funeral, and my father is there and my brother is there. And I remember thinking like, oh, my brother is a man now. Like he's on the bad side now. Like we had such a close relationship. And it was just like, no, that's not here anymore. Like my brother is like my father. He's become my father. And I had this moment of standing up for myself where I was like, I told my father, like, because I think from what I could gather, custom would be for him to come and live with me after the death of my mother,
Oh,
like
hell
to take
no.
care of him. And exactly, that was what I said. I was like, I literally don't care what happens to you. You will never live in my home. Like you will never live with me. I will never take care of you. The only reason I tolerated you was because of how much I loved my mother. But you're going to have to stay with my brother. And I remember thinking like that my brother, I was just like, yeah, like it's so sad that he was this boy and we had this great relationship, but then he became a man, and all of a sudden like he had that same harshness, that same sort of abusive personality that my father did. And it was like this moment of like kind of taking myself out of it and thinking about boys becoming men, and when that shift happens and how you can have these really close relationships with your brothers, but then they become part of that patriarchal system when they get older, and that tie is sort of cut. And so like for me, that memory was about cutting ties with my family, like once my mother was no longer there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this was originally about you wanting to investigate intimacy, and she took you to these relationships that really, it feels like, caused you to create walls and boundaries with other people because you had gotten hurt so much. Is there more hurt to come in this narrative?
Yeah, I guess so there's only two more memories left. And the next one that I had was my daughter's wedding. And it was an exciting time. And I remember like I see myself dancing, like I'm dancing at the wedding. I'm with a group of women. We're like doing this traditional dance. And I'm happy, but I'm also tremendously sad because I know that the one shining light in my life is now leaving to join
Mm.
another family and to go, live with her husband. But I remember being happy because it was like a love match. It was someone she wanted to be with. It wasn't like the relationship that I had had with her father. It was her being happy and excited, but there was this like grief, mingled with excitement and happiness because, you're happy that your daughter has like found, she's done what you always wanted for her. But there's also the sense of like, oh, but now here I am alone with this man that doesn't, at this point, all the children are gone because his kids were older. They were already gone. And it's just us. And the sense of like, oh my God, like the rest of my life is just going to be me with this man. And really feeling the grief of that.
You had one final memory, and what was that?
Actually, she stopped me at this point in the
Mm.
story. And she then brought up the intimacy stuff. She started asking me questions like, how does this make you feel? And how do you feel about the relationships that you had in this life? And where's the hurt? It was almost like a therapy session, like smack in the middle of it, where she really like kind of, and I was crying, weeping at this point during all of this, like her asking me all these questions about intimacy and about love and about how I felt in that life and what it had done to me and what it created in me. And it was really, really, really deep. And I'm not a crier. Like, I don't really cry in front of people, but I was like on the floor, tears just like everywhere. I don't even know how she could understand what I was saying.
So how long was that therapy session part that was in the middle there?
It wasn't too long. It was maybe like 10 or 15 minutes. It was like she just asked a lot of questions and really probed everything that I had told her up until that point, because she had been pretty passive up until then.
And then after that, she took you into another session and you had your final, like, what was this more, was this like the cathartic memory, or was it really just wrapping up that lifetime?
It was really wrapping up that lifetime. Like, she actually told me, she was like, now I want you to go to your death.
Mm.
Um, and so I saw myself in bed, like old, frail. My daughter was there holding my hand and, just kind of talking to me, and me being like, okay, I'm ready to go. And then, like, the end. Fiend. It was like kind of done. I just felt like, okay, it's almost like the end of a really good movie where you're like, wow, like it felt like really powerful and it was still
Mm.
sitting with you, but you were like complete with the experience. And I think because it had been so different from what I had thought it was going to be, that I was also still sitting in that. Like, it was way more powerful than I could have ever imagined.
How do you wrap something like that up though? I mean, with the movie, you like talk it over with your friend and or something. I mean, what did you do then?
Honestly, I can't remember how she ended it. I think she like undid the hypnosis, or like kind of brought me out of the hypnosis. And then she was like, oh, like, initially I was going to cook breakfast for you, but you came later. Would you want to eat lunch with me? She's like, I cook in clay pots. I hope that's okay. I was like, yeah, it's totally okay. It sounds delicious. And she was like, I'm a vegetarian, but I'll make you an egg curry and like we can sit and eat that. And yeah, so we just got up and she went in the kitchen and like made me probably one of the best meals I've ever eaten in my life. Like, this completely authentic homemade egg curry that we ate with our hands, because that's the tradition there. And we just sat and talked, kind of like gossip. Like, she was telling me about her personal life and drama that she had in her life, and she kind of talked a little bit about her family, because I think I'd asked her, oh, like, you say your mother does this, what has that been like? And she kind of told me that they read each other and that they've read each other hundreds of times through like tons and tons of lives. She said her father, though, I thought this was interesting. She said her father doesn't believe in it at all. And whenever he talks to her, he's like, so how many people have you conned today? Which I was like cracking up. But it sounds like she knows that that's how he is. And it's just a funny thing that they talk about. But yeah, it was like we were like girlfriends at a sleepover essentially at the afterwards, just chatting and talking. Like, we didn't even really talk about what had happened. We just kind of talked about our lives, and I learned more about her. And yeah, we ate this delicious meal she made. I was shocked. Like, I've never been like for a tarot reading and had somebody make me like a full meal after that. Like, it just
Yeah.
felt so intimate. Like, I felt like I got to know her a little bit. Obviously, she knew I told her my whole entire life story the first time I like sat down and we had gone through this experience. So I felt like it was nice that she also shared something of herself, because I think there's also that remove that happens a lot of times when you have these experiences where, you go and you're getting this stuff from people, and you're kind of trying to think of how to explain it, but it's like I feel like you're getting something from them and you're giving them, like, you're telling them things about you, and they're learning details that maybe you don't share with people all the time, but you never really get a peek into their life and what they're about and what they're doing and just their day to day. And I felt like I got to know her. She was very open and told me a lot of stuff about her life and her experiences, and even just like drama with her dating life, like things like that you wouldn't think that you would just sit there and be chatting about that, but it felt very special.
Are you there a total of 3 hours, or was the session 3 hours and then there was the meal on top of that?
Yeah, the session was 3 hours and then there was the meal on top of that. So I was probably there for like 4.5, maybe 5 hours. Because
Damn.
like she had to actually cook it. Like, it wasn't like she just like pulled something out and reheated it. Like, I watched her cook everything and make the food, and then we sat and talked and ate it and kind of like chilled for a little bit. Like, I mean, she basically gave me almost half of her day. I feel like.
It's amazing for $45. Oh my God. After all of that, that's a lot to process for you. Did you have any post weird experiences, like weird dreams that night, or any more crying jags or anything like that over the next few days?
I felt like very like unburdened is the word that's coming to my mind. Almost like I didn't know I was carrying around all of this shit. And then I took it off. And so I didn't have any cry. Like it wasn't anything like that. And actually, when I got back to the hotel that night, I wrote all of it down. Like I was like,
Smart.
I need to like capture this before I forget it. And I don't know, I felt it just felt like this freedom and kind of gave me like a little bit of insight because I have always sort of been like, I don't understand where these issues that I have come from. Like my parents have been married forever. My father is like the nicest man in the world. Like there's nothing in my childhood that I could really pinpoint to why I have these intimacy blocks. And so it kind of gave me this thing to be like, oh, well, yeah, this is a thing that happens to you. I could totally understand why you would behave in this way. And I really felt like it gave me a lot to think about, but it also freed me in a way. Like I felt less like constricted. Like I felt like I could relax a little bit. And I felt just not as heavy anymore. Like there was a lightness that I hadn't ever known before around intimacy.
So it's been 3 years. Do you feel like it has helped you with intimacy in relationships?
It was more like I think it helped me crack open a door that I didn't really know I needed to open. And I don't know if I was ready to step through that door. I think now I'm at the point in my life where I'm stepping through that door. But I think it was like an important foundation. It gave me a little bit more of an awareness of the problem because like I said, when she asked me what I wanted to heal, like I honestly didn't know. It wasn't like I just launched into that. Like I had to sit there and think. And I'm like, well, if this is the thing that's coming up for me, then obviously it's a problem. So I felt like it was more like it showed me something that I might not have been as willing to see before.
It didn't just affect me in that lifetime, it's affecting me in this lifetime as well.
Yeah.
And so that must be validating, right?
Oh yeah, it was extremely validating. And I think that to me was like worth the experience. Like it just made me feel like it explained some things that I knew were problems, but that I kind of had like pushed in the back of my mind and it kind of like popped them to the front for a little bit. I felt like it started like a path that I might not have gotten on had I not, had that experience with her.
In the second one that I did, which was hypnotherapy, I cried the whole time, much like you. I was a blubbering mess, but mine was also remote, which was really weird. So she was doing it over the phone. So it really was like the voice in the room, like you said, it was just like, I'm in my bed and there's this lady in my ear. I almost wish that I got to stay with one life like you did. That quality over quantity thing.
How long was each like life? Like how much time did you spend?
So the one that I did with the hypnotherapist, that was a 90-minute session. And she did something similar. This was in 2014. She did some prep stuff. She was like, relax, make sure you have water nearby and get settled and that kind of thing. She didn't do any Reiki, but then she kind of like yours did, led me into the past life regression, to the hypnosis part. I don't know how long each one was. A time didn't really make sense. Did you know that it was taking 3 hours? Did you feel like it was a long time?
No, it felt like a second. Like that's why I was actually kind of surprised that I didn't get to do a second one because I was like, oh, I figure like when we're done with this, I'll go down another hallway. And then like, we looked at the clock and I was like, oh God, like the time is already up.
The minute that she put me like under, I started sobbing. We weren't even doing anything.
Oh
like there was no memory yet. I don't know what she did. Maybe she opened my heart with some kind of energy work. I'm not sure, but I don't know what's going on. So I just kind of went with it. And, the ones that stood out to me were, there were three. One, I was this rich lady with blonde hair and it was the 80s. And I had big, like poofy hair, like the spray, what's the Aquanet? That shit.
Yeah.
Really big. But it was done well because I was rich. And then I was a tennis player, meaning I didn't work. My husband made a lot of money and I just played tennis. And my son was a drug addict and I was really upset about it. And my son was my best friend in this lifetime. Mm-hmm. And it was so weird to see this kid that is my son that looks totally different than my best friend, but I knew it was him. Oh, I wanted to ask, did anybody seem familiar to you like that?
No, so that's what I think is really interesting about yours. Like, I didn't have anything like that with where I was like, my family now was like like nothing. But I also wasn't looking for it like at all. Like, I feel like that wouldn't have even come into my consciousness. And even now reflecting on it, I was like, who could that have been? Like, I'm like, was my father somebody in my life currently that is not a nice person? But no, I didn't feel any kind of familiarity in that way. Not to say that like it wasn't there. It's just like I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, well, and you said her and her mother have done hundreds of these for each other. You'd probably at some point you've got to find somebody that's the same,
Yeah.
right? Like some
No,
kind of soul family or something.
I definitely would like I would love that's something I've always really wanted to explore more that I haven't like around that whole reincarnation piece is it's like do we come back with the same people and loves and past like do they come back with us like all of that and I don't know like I don't know what I think about it like I feel like I'm very open but I don't know if I have an opinion. I'm also adopted and so that's also interesting to me like where I'm like well what does that mean biology versus who you were raised with like do you see biological people that come back in these lives with you or was I put in this family in this life for like a specific reason like
Right.
there's so many questions.
It's like there's so much. Some of this has got to be true. But
Yeah.
then which of it is, how do you know? I don't know. So for my second one that popped up, I was a man in war. I think it was Vietnam
Oh
War.
wow.
And I had gotten seriously injured. And this Vietnamese woman came and she saved me. And she did not need to save me. I hated her. I had hate in my heart toward her.
Wow.
And right off the bat, I was fighting. But if I fought her, I would have died. I was going to die. And so she ignored my whatever I was saying, and she took me and she brought me back to life. And I learned in that lifetime that that there aren't enemies really. We're all connected. We're all one. And I fell in love with her, and I think we had a child together. And for some reason, that life was very, very emotional for me because it was where I learned how to be a more loving person and how to see myself and other people. And because that person was the epitome of the enemy for me.
That's really powerful.
Just real quick, I'll tell you about the other one because it was different. I went to a Native American shaman and she did a pretty quick one. I think it was 30 to 45 minutes, somewhere in there. And this was what we thought it was going to be. Like she sat there.
Oh, okay.
She went into like a meditative state. I think I held a crystal, maybe. And then I kind of calmed my nervous system down. And then she told me what she saw. And she was like, you and your mother, it was kind of rapid fire. Your mother and you are super close. You've been in multiple lifetimes together. You like to learn lessons from each other. You used to be brother and sister, and then you were sister and brother. You've been like every combination of siblings you can be. And now this lifetime, you wanted to be her daughter because you wanted to stop taking advantage of each other. You had been like power playing each other for the last couple of lifetimes.
Wow.
And I thought that was pretty interesting because I have kind of a Gilmore Girls mom situation. I have a young mom and the line between like being a friend and being a mom was often blurred. So power plays happened a lot, and it did often feel like she was my sibling. Maybe she was just conning me. I'm not sure, but it did feel like it could have truth to it.
Did you find that experience less powerful than the one where you kind of were feeling the things? Like, did you have a preference, I guess, between the two?
I felt that this one was much less powerful. The second one, I felt like this 100% happened to me, like you said. The other one, I felt like this feels true. I'm open to anything. So sure. That's how I felt. But after the second one, I was like, okay, I was like, it was real. I think it would be interesting to do both. You could try someone like this and see how you feel about it. I'd be curious to hear.
Yeah, I've had a couple of psychics say things to me about past lives. It's never been like the whole reading, but like I have a huge fear. Like I don't like to drive, like almost an irrational fear of driving. I mean, I do it because in LA, you kind of have to.
Yeah, I was
And a
gonna
psychic
say.
that I see regularly, or that I used to see regularly, one session, she was like, yeah, in a past life, you were in this terrible car accident, like awful
Mm.
car accident. And she's like, you didn't die, but that's like where the fear from it comes. And like, to your point, like the same thing where I was like, well, yeah, that sounds like it could be true, but because I didn't like feel that, it didn't really feel real. And I think another friend of mine had told me that a psychic had kind of rattled off a couple of like past life, like they told her she'd been murdered in a past life, like a couple of things like that. And she was like, yeah, I could see some of this stuff happening. But I think when you see that, not that I really want to go through down the rabbit hole of watching myself be murdered, but like there's
Why not?
there's like something about experiencing it that I think just makes it a little bit more real to you, because you're really feeling like you're in that moment, as opposed to like me sitting across from somebody and they're just kind of like, so you did this and that and this and that. And like you said, it could make sense and it could be true, but you just don't have that same like emotional like resonance with it.
It feels more real when you're like, okay, something in my brain brought this up for me.
She and I had actually kind of talked a little bit about that when she was going over the hypnosis stuff with me. Like, you know, she was saying that, yeah, some people are just like, well, this is all fake. And she's like, well, your brain is bringing, like, this is coming from somewhere. Like, you're not just, and it's true. I didn't feel like I wasn't saying anything to make her do something. Like, there was no motive behind it. I was saying what I saw. Like, there was nothing that felt like I was manipulating anything or that she was manipulating me. Like, it was like, this was all coming out of me. So it clearly came from someplace.
I don't have that like just marinating in the back of my mind.
No, me neither. Like, I've never even been to Bangladesh. And before that period, I'd never been to India. Like, it had to have been real in some sort of way, because it definitely was not rehearsed. And especially the visual component of it too, for me, where I was like, I don't tend to like make up fantasy worlds in my mind as I'm sitting. Like, it felt like she was really pulling something from somewhere.
Thank you so much for taking the time to answer all of my questions. Seriously.
Oh, no, thank you. And thank you for sharing your experiences as well. It was interesting to hear. I don't know anyone else who has had a past life regression that I've spoken to about it. So that was really cool for me to hear as well.
What is the most woo-woo, inexplicable, spooky experience you've ever had? In this case, I really want to know if it's this past life regression, and if it's not, what was it?
No, this is definitely the most woo-woo thing I've ever had happen. I've never done anything like it before that. I haven't done anything like it since. And I think it would be really hard for me to top this, which is probably why I haven't tried.
Yeah,
because
well,
it was so powerful.
When did you move to LA?
5 months.
Oh, yeah, you're going to top that woo experience. It's going to happen. I don't know when, but I feel that it will happen. Not that it has to. That could be some people never have anything like that. So I don't mean to diminish it at all, but I think LA is just fertile for the woo.
I mean, I would love to top it because it was great. I'd love to have more experiences like that.
Well, that is all for this episode. If you have any specific questions about reincarnation or past life regressions, or you want to share your own unique experiences, please email me at followthewoo@gmail.com. I don't know about you, but this episode made me want to book a flight to India ASAP and book multiple sessions with this woman that Tara got to work with. I also want to let you know, if you're new to the past life regression reincarnation world and you're wanting to investigate it more, but you don't quite know where to start, I would definitely recommend the book, Many Lives, Many Masters. So I'll put that information in the show notes. And again, remember, if you have questions, you can always reach out to me. I love to talk about this stuff. If I don't know the answer, we can research it together and it'll be super cute. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you for following the woo with me today. If you love what you heard, please make sure to subscribe to Follow the Woo wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're feeling particularly stoked about this show, please leave a review and or rating. You can also support this podcast by becoming a member of the Order of Woo, where you'll get community access and loads of extra goodies exclusively on Patreon. That's patreon.com/followthewoo. The Order of Woo patrons bolster this podcast and community and allow for the creation of more content, products, services, and events over time. Every little bit helps, and I'm so grateful for the patrons who have joined the order already. If you've experienced something magical, mystical, or just downright weird and want to discuss it, or if you're interested in sharing your expertise, or if you want me to research a woo topic with you or for you, please email me at followthewoo@gmail.com. Join me next week for another woo topic, and remember, tell the truth, be nice to each other, and if it feels right,